Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Outside the Lines. This is the show where we talk about humans and humanity and the things that define us or the things we think define us. And one of the things that we think define us is politics. Whether you're a Republican or whether you're a Democrat or whether you're independent or whatever party you subscribe to or even if you don't, politics affects all of our lives at some point. Uh, and so, to talk about politics and the political landscape at the moment in our country, this being a political an election year, let me bring up my lovely host. And I haven't been able to say this for a while since we haven't been on for a while. The Queen of Hair Hats, Miss Renee Yaworski.
Thank you. And I'm donning one right now, and I'm actually in the same residence as Manny. I'm just
Yeah,
one room over.
she's
I could just walk behind him at any moment.
in another room, and oh wait, no,
That was me. That was
that was,
me.
was that? Yeah, it was just anyway.
I'm
Uh,
just darting back and forth.
just running back and forth very quickly. Yeah. And don't be surprised if we have a doggy cameo at some point. So
We live
that's
for the
that's
doggy
always fun.
cameos.
We'll live for the yeah. But anyway, we're talking about politics. Probably one of the there's two things that people say that you should never talk about at in polite company or at a dinner party or whatever, and that's religion and politics.
Yeah.
Well, we've pretty much already broken that rule.
We break that every time we come
we
out here.
we break those rules. We've talked about religion, and now we're hitting politics, which is become a very divisive topic of late. And Renee, why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so divisive nowadays to talk about politics or just politics in general?
Honestly, I think when you get two people in a room together, they tend to agree more than they disagree. But I do think that it behooves some of the platforms and organizations and lobbyists to sort of stoke fires. And I really do believe that that's true. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. I absolutely don't think that a lot of that is like consciously going on. But I just think that people like to think about social media, think about how the algorithms actually reward controversy and discourse that's more discord rather than discourse. So the more the angry emojis that are used, the more hateful language that's used, social media will bump those up in our feeds because it gets more engagement. It's kind of exciting or it gets your adrenaline flowing. So I think there's also that element too. I think it's fun to debate. I think people like to see differences as well. And like you said at the beginning of this show, it's a big part of identity. I think a lot of people like to belong to a group. It's sort of like when we're watching a baseball game. It's so fun to cheer for the home team, to wear the same jerseys. And to people who feel like outliers, it can be really comforting to sort of have your tribe given to you. And in America, if you're conservative or you're liberal, I think that there's some element of, oh, this is who I am, and there's other people who believe like me. And the platform kind of gets given to you, but there's a comfort in that. That's just my guess.
Well, I think you're right. I think I agree. I think social media, the rise of social media, and the rise of 24-hour news channels like CNN and Fox News and programs like that have given a platform for people to express their opinions, where in other times they may not have been able to on both sides of the issues, and sometimes to our detriment. Because people sometimes are so passionate about what they believe that yeah, they may fudge the facts a little bit, or just use talking points or whatever without really verifying or going through the process of actually checking to see if anything if anything is actually true of what they're
Right.
saying, if there's
Mhm.
truth to what they're saying. Well, so we have a special guest today to also chime in on this topic, and that's Mr. Allen Coffey. And he's coming up here in a minute.
Alan, can you hear us?
Uh-oh. Have we lost Alan?
I don't know. Well, let's see.
Let's give him a minute.
Let's give
So,
him a minute, and we'll see if we as soon as I see him again, we'll
yeah,
bring
yeah,
him back on.
we'll bring him up. All right. Well, so the history of politics in America, of course, dates back right to the founding of the country. There were no real political parties as we know them today, of Republicans and Democrats. Uh, that started to come later as as people had different ideas of how the country should be run, how the Constitution should be interpreted, and so on and so forth. Um, and yeah, there were arguments, there were debates, but and maybe because we there was only newspapers to carry the news of what one politician was saying, what other. Um there wasn't that immediate feedback from the ordinary citizen. Politicians went around and actually had to travel and stump for their candidacy. Um, well, it appears that Mr. Coffey lost his internet connection,
Oh
um,
no.
so he may or may not be joining us after all.
It might
Um,
Okay, well, what do we want to do?
well, I think you and I can continue.
Okay.
Uh, Um, I mean, I really wanted his opinion on the matter, but
Well, we can
and
if he doesn't show up at the end of the hour, we can do a part 2 with Alan.
sure, sure,
That would
yeah.
be fun. Double the
He,
trouble.
he he may be able
Good
to
trouble.
just he might just have to reboot the router or whatever
It
whatever the
happens to all
situation
of
is.
us all the time.
It happens. It happens. Unfortunately, that's the price we pay for technology.
Yes.
Is we don't always have that connectivity as we would like, but anyway, so one of the things that people sometimes say, and they've said it to me, is this: that if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Mhm.
Meaning that you have to have an opinion about different
Right.
different topics, whether it's politics or whatever, and you should stand by those things. I think one of the problems that we're having in this country right now is that nobody seems to want to compromise anymore. Uh, you know, and this is a problem that cuts across the entire political spectrum. Is that everybody is so entrenched with their side, their opinions, their beliefs, that nobody wants to give an inch. Nobody wants to say, well, maybe let's hear what you have to say. It's like no, no. We saw that prominently, especially in 2008 when President Obama was running for president and then later became president. The then Speaker of the House, John Boehner, and the Speaker of the Senate, or the head of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, both came out and said, "We are going to be the party of no. We're just going to say no to anything this president proposes. We don't care. We're just going to obstruct everything that he wants for whatever their reasons were." And I feel like it kind of it was a slow build up to that, and I do believe that a lot of that had to do with the changing social structure, and also the influence of a lot of media personalities, people like Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck, especially on the right, on the political right, uh, constantly bashing on liberals and constantly bashing on Democrats, and then Fox News came along, and there was a lot of of negative spin on anything that Democrats or Republic or liberals, presumed liberals, were doing, and so because of that, and because of the increasing divide between the two parties and between the two philosophies of liberal and conservative, um, and the perception that each had of the other, of what they stood for, what they believed, and the misinformation that was being spread from both sides of what one believed and what the other believed. Well, liberals want to destroy America. They want to do this and they want to do that. And conservatives want to do, and all that stuff. Um, so that doesn't become conducive to a more reasoned, more like, no, let's look at the issues. What are the issues here, and what can we do to solve them? What are the real problems? And unfortunately, a lot of politicians nowadays uh, talk about, well, we need to address the problems that Americans are facing, and so on and so forth. And yet, everything they do doesn't seem to be actually doing that, to be actually addressing those issues. Uh, they all seem to just want to be sniping at the other party. Uh, right now we're going through this whole thing about the president's son, and did he buy influence with his father? And they want to impeach the president because of alleged whatever misdeeds they think he did. But a lot of it, I suspect, is really in retaliation to what happened when the other side, the Democratic side, tried to impeach President Trump during his term for things that he supposedly did. So it's become this game of one-upsmanship, of gamemanship, that has absolutely nothing to do with solving the problems that ordinary Americans have. Um, so what do you think about that, Renee? What can you opine on that?
Yeah, that really resonates with me. So that goes back to kind of what I was talking about earlier. And there was a documentary that was really poignant to watch. This woman made a documentary of her father, who had raised her to be such an open-minded, loving, compassionate giver and volunteer. And he discovered Fox News. And he totally turned into someone who was raging hate against people he had never had a negative opinion about in his life. I mean, he had raised her to be open minded, but he got into this addictive loop with Fox News. And there's a lot of, I'm not just picking on Fox News, but that they go home, they have psychologists that work for them, marketers who work for them, people who understand how to get listeners engaged and viewers engaged. And it's for money. It's obviously from, I mean, when Murdoch was involved in all that, and more than he even was today. I mean, he also owned where the Simpsons were, and a lot, he doesn't care. He's amoral. He just wanted money, and he knows how
Mhm.
to get people engaged. It's entertainment. Um, but I think that documentary about the woman's father really resonated with a lot of Americans, and a lot of people actually globally, because other countries get into this too. It's not like yellow journalism was invented in America, but this idea of you can sort of you get all this attention by getting people uh, freaking out about something and scapegoating.
Mhm.
So it's this whole thing. Like Trump did a rally, of course, in was the South Bronx yesterday, and he railed again against migrants and how they're forming an army. And he said crazy stuff that most people would never believe. But if but like all the news networks were running at least parts of that. So we're getting inundated with it. And if you take somebody who is vulnerable, or someone who's kind of naturally maybe stressed out, or they've had a negative experience with an individual from one of these groups, I can see how slowly you can, it's grooming. You're grooming people to have the view, the platform that you have. Now in America, we protect all of this. This is why Rush was allowed to say whatever he wanted, Tucker Carlson. We have freedom of speech. International law does not have the same protections. And whenever you have a genocide come out, you'll notice that the journalists do get served with arrest warrants. Like in Rwanda, they had a history of radio DJs for like 7 years prior to the Rwanda genocide, dehumanizing the Tutsis by calling them cockroaches. They wouldn't even call them Tutsis anymore. They were cockroaches, and the cockroaches are the reason you don't have the farms. The cockroaches are the reasons that your dating life sucks. Everything was about the cockroaches. So they were grooming an entire half of that population to do that. There's Russian journalists right now who are going to get served with arrest warrants, of course, from the ICC, which, who knows if that'll ever happen. But they can be served under international law because internationally people feel that there can be some culpability, criminal liability and culpability for fighting words. I mean, in Georgia, they actually have a law against fighting words, but it's this inciting, this sort of trying to pit people against one another. And of course, whenever you do that, there are certain people who do win. They win financially, or in other words. So compromise works for peace building and it works for humans, but compromise doesn't reward the social media algorithms. It doesn't reward the marketers. It doesn't reward a lot of lobbyists. And so that's why you sort of get this powder keg idea where everyone's, no one gives any quarter. Everything has to be this platform. And the people think differently than they did before that platform was out. It's not like everyone just came up with these ideas as a hive mind.
Right.
They
Yeah.
bought into it and they were told.
Right. Yeah. For me, something you just said about dehumanizing and pitting people against each other, uh, that's what resonates with me, and I think that's where politics have gone wrong. Is when you start demonizing a group of people for whatever reason, uh, to score political points. That's where politics goes wrong. That's where
Mhm.
politics becomes really divisive and really dangerous. Um, when you start looking at people as less than human, and we hear that
Yeah.
from people, when they talk about the LGBTQ community, when they talk about the trans community, when they talk about the black community or the migrant community or all these different communities, all these different groups of people, and say, oh, they're whether you're talking about migrants or immigrants. Oh, they're well, and of course we've heard this for years. Well, they're coming here to take your jobs. They're coming here to
Yeah.
take your jobs. Really? How many? I'm gonna go there. How many white people did
Mm.
you see out in the cotton fields, out in the the produce fields, picking lettuce and picking, you know, uh, I mean, I'm sure there were. I'm sure there were some, and I shouldn't just pick on white people, or any other race, anybody who
Right.
lives
Yeah.
in America. Let's say Americans, legal Americans, right? Doing those jobs, doing those hard labor jobs, washing dishes or whatever. I mean, yeah, there were people, but when an employer could hire somebody who may or may not be here legally for a lot less than they would have to pay a legal citizen
Hmm.
of any other race or any other statute or stature, I should say. Of course, they're going to do it. Because they know they have the advantage. Because they know if those people protest, bad working conditions or complain about not being paid or not being paid enough or whatever, what are they going to do? The employer is going to threaten them with deportation, right?
Right.
They're going to threaten them with, well, if you don't do this and this and this. Hey, I'm calling INS. I'm calling La Migra,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, so it's interesting that the only people who don't seem to be against illegal immigration are the people who employ all the illegal
Of
immigrants,
course.
who
Yeah.
encourage it, because
Mhm.
they know, and yet they're not the ones getting, well, there was an attempt, but of course I got shot down, to actually start making them accountable, start making people who employ uh, undocumented workers, uh,
Mhm.
start finding them and start, shutting them down. Um, because even lawmakers, even the people who are out there screaming about, them illegal immigrants coming in and taking jobs and what have you, they benefit as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they're not taking the money that these people are making for these other companies. Um, and it's a political football. It's just something to run on. It's just something like right now. You know, you have people uh, who are talking about illegal immigration and talking about why isn't the president help trying to solve this problem. He's the problem. He's letting all these people in,
Mhm.
and so the whole open borders debate.
Right.
Well, the truth is the border has always been open. We've always had an open border. People come, and if you go down to Brownsville, for example. I live in Texas, so I know this. I've seen it. I've been there myself. You go to Brownsville, right? You go to Laredo. You go to El Paso. Any of the ports of entry. People are coming and going every day, walking across the bridge, walking across. Whether for work, from one way or another. You see people from the U.S. coming into Mexico. You see people from Mexico going to the U.S. on a daily, on an hourly basis,
Right.
with no problem at all. I mean, yeah, they'll stop by immigration, they'll stop by customs officials, and they're inspected and they ask for their passport and so on and so forth. And so this idea that there's just millions, I mean, literally, that's what Trump said, that there were millions and millions of
Right.
people flooding into the country.
Mhm.
No, no. Yes, millions of people do cross the border from both sides on a daily basis. Yes, there are people who, unfortunately, for one reason or another, do try to cross, uh, you know, enter the country illegally. But the thing is that that is considered a misdemeanor.
Mhm.
At best, it's a misdemeanor. Uh, and really, I equate it to like being like when you were in high school and you were out in the hall and
Mhm.
you didn't have a hall pass.
Yeah, that's what
And
it is.
the
Yeah.
monitor stopped you and said, "Hey, where's your hall pass?" "Oh, I don't have one." Well, you're out there illegally. It's the same thing.
Mhm.
It's exactly the same thing.
It is. And you know what? Alan just popped in right now. So
Oh,
he can spit he can answer this. We're talking he got to hear like the last 30 seconds or so. So
awesome. Welcome back, sir. Glad you made
Yeah,
it.
thank you. I was having unexpected internet connectivity problems. I restarted.
Yeah,
I restarted everything in the house and finally
yeah,
got it back
that
on.
yeah, that's usually how it happens. Just you know, reboot the router.
Re-
reboot the router. Yep.
Reboot the router. Rebooted the
Yeah,
router. Rebooted the
yeah,
computer and
yeah,
rebooted
and now here,
everything. Here
yeah.
You're
I am.
here. They so happy.
Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing that just say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when Alan, when you and I were kids, when we were, Renee's age, we were just babies. uh, that rebooting the router wasn't even in our
No.
vocabulary, wasn't even something that we thought we would ever have to do.
No, it was more. It was more like they hung up. I got to call back.
Exactly. That was the height of our technology was
It was my dad on the roof with the bunny ears
with the
or
bunny ears. Yeah. How's the
Yeah.
Dad,
signal?
go to the left. Go to the left. Yeah.
Right.
When I was a kid, I was the remote control.
Exactly. Yes. Go
Yeah.
change it. Come on. Go change the channel. Click.
Go,
And
go
okay, you have to be
and twist the antenna so we can
exactly
maybe get
getting
pointed in a better
get the
direction.
signal of our three channels. Yeah, you know, and you have to be of a certain age to remember this. Click, click, click. You know, kids today, they don't know the struggles we went through with their TikToks,
Nobody knows the
the
troubles we've
troubles.
seen.
Right.
Mm-mm.
Nobody's
Now they
seen our non-internet sorrow.
exactly.
Nobody's seen the trouble we've known.
Uh,
Lots of
Nobody's
trouble.
seen our analog difficulties.
oh, all right. So we were talking about political divisions. We were talking about how political parties, at least it seems now, seems even more prevalent than ever. How they demonize certain groups and demonize certain uh, other people. Specifically, I was using the example of illegal immigration and how that's become such a big issue. And as a fellow Texan, do you want to speak to that? Do you want to speak
Sure,
to this
sure.
issue of immigration and whether it is the big issue or the big deal that some politicians are trying to make it out to be, or is it just another tempest in a teapot?
Well, I think really the only big deal about it for me is how those folks down at the border are getting mistreated by our government and by the people on the other side of the border on their way up here. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe they did, maybe they, you know, broke a misdemeanor level law. Okay, they broke a misdemeanor level law. They still don't deserve the way they're being treated, and particularly by the state of Texas with Governor Abbott and his basically rogue uh, ad hoc internet, I'm not internet, I mean ad hoc border patrol that he's put together now, Operation Texas. And he's gonna stop all them illegal aliens from coming across the river down there by putting razor wire and putting them big old floaty thing, big old buoys down there with them saw blades in between. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're just let them drown in the river, you know, because you know they aren't worth saving. That's reprehensible, particularly for a man that calls himself a Christian. Um, you know, Jesus said you're supposed to help the weak, the vulnerable. You're supposed to be, you know, you're supposed to treat others as you yourself want to be treated, and
Hmm.
not be a bully. I hate bullies, and I really think that 98% of this is just bullying for political advantage. You
Well,
know,
you know,
in
yeah,
the past, in the past, yeah, we did some pretty reprehensible things too, like in the early 1900s, where we were chasing Hispanic people from both sides of the border. And, oh, they're a smuggler. Bam! The Texas Rangers would just kill them. You know, I just read a big article about that the other day in the Washington Post.
yeah,
And yeah, we've always been bad to folks who want to come across the border, quote, illegally or not.
yeah. Well,
It's
I was telling Renee earlier. I don't know if you caught that, but you know, if you go actually, like you said, if you go to the border and you go to these border towns, the various ports of entries, I mentioned Brownsville and Laredo and El Paso, and there are other places, Eagle Pass. Uh, People are coming and going every
yeah,
day.
yeah.
You know,
There are people who live
no,
in Mexico work in Texas. People who
right,
live in Texas work in Mexico.
right.
Mother-in-law lives in Texas. The kid and the kid and her husband or wife lives in Mexico. Vice versa.
Right,
You know,
right,
it's
exactly,
not
exactly.
it's
You know,
not
what I was saying, is that you hear these politicians, uh, especially on the political right, a lot of Republicans screaming about open border. How the border's wide open. The border's wide open. Well, yeah, the border's never been closed. We don't have a closed border. What
Mm-hmm.
they mean is we don't want these brown-skinned people coming in,
Exactly. Exactly.
and
It's all white supremacy crap.
diluting our country.
That's right.
Again,
Poisoning
it's
the blood of our people, as Donald Trump has said on
poisoning
numerous
the blood of
occasions.
our people, which is uh, something that a certain other a a non-forgotten someone oh just say it a German politician
Adolf
said
Hitler. Just say
back in a
Adolf Hitler.
man, I was trying to be, but yes, it's something Hitler would say.
Just say Adolf.
Just say it. Just say
Uncle
it.
Adolf.
Stop being wimpy. Yeah, exactly. It's just something. I mean, it's right out of Goebbels' playbook. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Renee brought up the speech that he gave in New York recently in the Bronx, talking about millions and millions of illegal immigrants coming here to take your jobs and all this stuff. No, no,
Well,
there's no
if
millions and millions.
I think of
Uh,
it this way: as I saw a meme here a while back, and I've seen it several times, called Schrodinger's immigrant. He comes and steals your job, and yet at the same time he's lazy and lives on welfare. And that's
exactly,
basically the picture they're painting.
exactly,
Schrodinger's
exactly.
immigrant.
Yeah, and I've heard it. I hear it all the time. Well, they just came here to take advantage of all the free stuff. They get free phones and they get free this and free that. Uh, no, they don't.
They do not.
That has never happened. And of course, the thing. Well, they're just bringing them over here so they can vote for the Democrats because they're going to give them all this free stuff and all that.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're
No,
not.
no, no.
That's not why they're coming here. That's not why they just like every other group that has ever come to this country. All the European people who came over to this country, beginning with the English settlers, although history didn't begin with them. Why did they come here? What's the thing that everyone always says? To have a better life,
Mm-hmm.
to have more freedom, because it sucked back where they came from. The
Yeah,
Pilgrims, the Puritans came over here because they were being persecuted in England and they wanted to be able to practice their faith as they saw fit.
that's
And
right.
so they came to these shores, and things happened, and the rest is literally history.
But
Uh,
what's really
now the Spanish came over here searching for fortune and glory. They
fortune and
weren't running
glory,
away
kid.
from anything.
Fortune and glory.
Exactly, they weren't running away from anything. They came over here going, "Where's the gold? Where's the? How can we dominate this country?" And people forget that the colonization of this part of the world, these two hemispheres, didn't begin with the English, didn't begin with the founding of the U.S. People were here two, three
Mm-hmm.
hundred years before that. That took over, Mexico, Central America, large chunks of South America, up into what is now the west coast of the United States. That was all Spanish territory, and then right down the middle in the Mississippi Basin, we had the French territory uh, that later became, Madison's Folly, uh, or no, Jefferson's
Jefferson's father.
Folly. Jefferson's Folly, when he bought it from the French, and they were like, "Well, that was a waste of money." Uh,
Yeah, but even before that, though, it belonged to the Spanish, and Napoleon got it, or the French somehow ended up getting it from the Spanish,
well, yeah,
and
after
then
the war, yeah,
it's there was a and
because of
Napoleon
yeah,
didn't unload it.
yeah, the various Napoleonic wars that happened, uh, which is also why part of Canada is still French. You know, that whole they don't
Quebec.
call them states. They call them what do they call
Provinces.
provinces, right? Um, and where we get the Cajuns, because they came down from French Canada
They come down from Acadie.
yeah, and settled in New Orleans, Louisiana. Anyway, so immigration has has always been an issue. If you ever saw the movie The Gangs of New York,
Mm-hmm.
right then, had it's whoever decides that this is their territory makes the rules, and they don't want other people coming in to claim it. You had the people who felt like, well, we're the natives, we're the native people here, even though they killed off the actual natives
That's right.
or
They
shoved them into genocided them. It's like, but this is our land now. This we don't want them. Them whoever they are. Once it was the Italians or the Irish or the
whatever group of
Jews
non-white people.
or now the Latin Americans. Hello.
That's my dog. Carrot, stop.
Speaking of doggy cameos, so yeah, and unfortunately, politics, buys into this notion, this nativist notion of, because you hear that phrase being thrown
Mhm.
around, real Americans. Well, real Americans are this or that or the other, but we never really get a definition of what exactly a real American is. Now, we're supposed to think that they mean people who were born in this country, but there are other aspects to it, because generally speaking, the people who talk about real Americans tend to be white, conservative, Christians, straight, and there are other people who for one reason or another are now demonizing people who are not that. They're the ones who talk about the as I was saying earlier, talk about the LGBTQ community and talk about the trans community and all these other communities who are not that, who are not straight, white, Christian, and conservative, and try to other them and try to
Mhm.
suggest that, well, they aren't real Americans. Heck, they might not even be real people.
Yeah.
Again, in an effort, and
Yeah.
I think what we're getting at, I think the root of what we consider to be divisive in this country uh, is power, is trying to maintain power. I asked someone once, who identified as a conservative, what is it that you're trying to conserve? Because obviously that's what a conservative would be, right? So what are you trying to conserve? And they gave me, the answer was, well, we're trying to conserve traditional American values, which is about as vague and mealy mouthed a term as you can come up with.
Mm-hmm.
What does that even mean? What are traditional American values? What is a traditional American? And again, it goes back to this idea of a real American. And I think we've already defined it.
Yeah. This is a white man's country, is how I've heard it put, historically
Exactly.
speaking. In fact, when they dedicated the Confederate statue at downtown Victoria in 1912, which is right at the height of all that kind of stuff being installed all across the United States to drive the final nail in Reconstruction. And one of the speakers said, the Yankees, they beat us up pretty bad, words to that effect. But they finally came around to realize it's a white man's country, and it's going to always be a white man's country. And it's like, yeah, that's what.
Yeah. And uh-oh. Looks like he froze.
Oh,
But
now
the
I'm back now. But now
oh,
you
okay.
okay? Yeah,
Ah,
because we
shoot.
went away for a minute both on my screen. But
Uh-oh.
yeah, it's that white supremacist stuff.
Right.
That
Yeah.
they throw up all this. all these little piddly things. But the reality is, underneath, it's built, all this traditional Americans value stuff is built on a foundation of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it got an even more religious veneer when the moral majority came into being in the 1979, 1980, and hooked up with
Mm-hmm.
our friend Ronald Reagan. And
Yeah. There you
Reagan
go.
sort of injected that into the mainstream.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah.
been That's been the foundation that the divisiveness in our country has been built on, because you've got two groups of people. You've got these people over here who are for traditional American values, aka white people make the rules, and we do things the way the white people want to do. And then you got another group of people over here saying, hey, we believe in egalitarianism, in freedom. We believe that people should be free to be who they really are, that they should be free to have the same kind of standard of living, that a decent standard of living, and that they should be free to get education and move forward in life, instead of being kept down here economically in this bad spot that they've ended up in. And Reagan started that trend against all that stuff, and it has just been snowballing ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump is kind of like mm, he is the most accurate avatar of that to date. He's a little better at it, because he's much more skilled in the use of populist language to make it sound like, oh yeah, I'm for the ordinary people. No, he's not for the ordinary people. He's for keeping the ordinary people in their place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's something else I wanted to bring up when we talk about politics, is the influence of money
Ah,
in our political system. You know, because I mean, truth be told, uh, people of wealth wield a lot of influence in how in the process, in the
they
legislative
wield too much
process.
influence.
Exactly. And it doesn't help that we had a Supreme Court ruling that said that, hey, you know what? Corporations are people too.
Hmm.
And so they can, contribute as much money as they want to a political party or a political individual or a politician.
We know
Uh,
the real
uh,
travesty of that is they used the 14th Amendment to come to that. I think 1890 was the first time corporations were referred to as persons. And the 14th Amendment was the pretext that they used for that. No due process rights will be denied to a person. And they said,
mhm,
well, a corporation is a person. And then that just kind of rocked along in the background. And in 1978, they gave that person more rights. And then finally, with Citizens United, they gave that person the right to just bribe the hell out of everybody,
mhm,
because money is speech,
mhm.
you know?
Right,
And so
yeah.
now that person has more rights, that corporate person has more rights than you do or than I do, as a
Mhm.
real life, honest to God, flesh and blood human being.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the other thing. The when we talk about, you and I, we've had some discussions about Texas politics, living as we do in a very deeply in a red state, and living in an area that is deeply red as well. Um, and we talk about, you mentioned Governor Abbott and his we have Lieutenant Governor Patrick
And Patrick, yeah.
and Attorney General Ken Paxton and all those people. But let's the fact is, they supposedly are the ones who run the state, but the reality is that they're not.
No.
The people who actually run the state really is really almost one man, and that is a man named Tim Dunn, who
Yes.
is a Texas oil baron. He is a
Yes.
billionaire. He donates millions and millions of dollars to people like Abbott and Paxton and Patrick and Sid Miller and all the other people who and all the legislators. He pretty much owns the capital. He pretty much owns Austin,
Yeah.
the, the capital. He owns the government. Now, the other problem with that, we talked about religion as well, is that not only is he a billionaire, he is a pastor as well, and he is shaping
Mm-hmm.
what he wants is to make Texas a theocracy,
Oh
a
yeah.
lovely right-wing oligarchic theocracy.
Well, I
Ruled.
would say even further than that, fascistic theocracy.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Well,
look at the kind of stuff Abbott is doing.
hmm
He's just he's doing the same kind of stuff that Mussolini and uh, Franco and now that guy in Hungary, Viktor Orban,
hmm
oppressing people. He's not going overboard like the Nazis did, but he's working his way up to where
Yeah,
he can
yeah, yeah.
really let people have it.
So I think
Sorry, I interrupted you there.
no, no, no. I, I, I honestly feel, and I think you would agree with me, that until we get money out of politics, nothing's going to change. But I think I don't know if that's ever going to happen because the people who control the purse strings, who are the politicians, are the same ones who are benefiting from things like
Mm-hmm.
Citizens United and so forth.
Yeah.
And it's also, this idea of plausible deniability, which also began with the Reagan era, uh, of, well, no, yeah, Tim Dunn can come in and say, look, I don't know what you're talking about. Influence. I'm just donating to my favorite candidate, just like everybody else. I mean, yeah,
I'm
I
just a
mean,
guy.
I'm just a man who made good. I was blessed by God that I have all these billions of dollars. Not that he was lucky enough to inherit this company or buy into it. Uh, you know, um, so there's always that, and I honestly believe that money is a huge problem, clearly. But when you mix money with religion, which is
Mm,
almost self, which is almost supposed to be contradictory if you honestly believe in what the Bible says,
that's
or at
right.
least follow what Jesus said. Uh, again, going back to a situation we had in Texas, where we have these really draconian, like in unfortunately, a lot of red states are following suit. We have these draconian laws that are aimed at preventing women from exercising any kind of control over their reproductive rights. We had a situation where a woman uh, needed to have an emergency abortion
Mm-hmm.
and was denied that because of Texas law, where she was forced to wind up, I mean, literally fleeing to another state because her pregnancy was not going to be viable. Uh, and
It was on the verge of killing her.
it was on the verge of killing her, right? So it makes me question these people when they talk about, well, I'm pro-life. I'm pro-life. No, no, you're not.
Mm-mm.
You're anti-abortion. You're
You're
pro-birth.
pro birth.
But more than that, it's not that you're pro-birth. It's not that they're pro-birth. Rather, it's that they're pro keeping women as second-class citizens, keeping women where, I mean, we had that
Yeah.
situation recently with the football guy, this kicker who comes from this very privileged, again, wealthy
Mm-hmm.
background,
Yeah.
who is the kicker for the Chiefs, making this commencement speech and basically saying, yeah, it's good that you got this little degrees, but really, you should be married. You should be married and in the kitchen because that's really where you belong. You know,
Barefoot
uh,
in the
barefoot
kitchen.
and pregnant. Again, and you and I talked about this. Essentially, they see women as broodmares.
That's right.
They see women as baby factories.
That's right.
I
They see it
mean,
as breeding
I've
livestock.
actually, yeah, I've actually heard a somebody who is conservative, who is a right wing person, saying, talking about how women on the right, women who would vote Republican, women are, which again amazes me.
Yeah.
Uh, they need to have more babies because all these lefties, all these liberals are having all these babies, or we need to have more babies because that way,
We can
yeah,
outproduce them.
we can outproduce them.
I have
And
actually heard
again,
that. I've heard that
yeah,
as a legitimate, as a from preachers and from Christians saying, the key to bringing our nation to Christ is to have more babies than the liberals and the atheists are having. More
right,
white
exactly.
babies.
More, yeah, yeah, exactly. Specifically, more white babies.
Yeah, more
Um,
babies.
yeah, and no, I got some pushback for saying
I
that,
can
as
imagine. Yeah.
as you would expect. Saying that how dare I, you know, and I'm not saying that women shouldn't be happy being homemakers, that they shouldn't be happy to be married, that they shouldn't be happy to have children. Of course, if that's their choice, and see that's the key issue. If that's their choice, if that's what they want to do, then more power to them.
That's
You
right.
know, if they want to follow that traditional path, then again, that should be their choice. It shouldn't be because some man says that that's what they ought to be doing. No, it's because they chose to do that.
Well, yeah, because when I look at this stuff about reproductive rights and anti-abortion stuff, I frame it that way, but then I frame it in a bigger picture of bodily autonomy. If you do not
Right,
have control over your own body in a very basic sense, then you're
hmm,
not really ever free because
right,
you can't if I can't, short of killing myself, just, well, even then, bodily autonomy, a person
hmm,
should have a right to do with their own body what they want to do with it.
exactly, exactly,
Particularly medically, if they don't want to have kids but they still want to enjoy a robust sex life, then they should be provided with the means to do that. And if it sometimes requires an abortion for whatever reason, then that need to have an abortion. It's interesting that when you look at Europe doesn't have the same kind of problems with unwanted pregnancy that the United States does, because they have comprehensive, complete, non-religious sex education from like early on.
bingo,
You know,
bingo.
the United States, you're lucky if you can even mention the word sex in a public school, because you remember sex ed at Stroman High School, don't you? Coach
Oh yeah,
Oswald was the guy who did it with us. Remember
yeah,
Coach Oswald?
oh yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and it,
We
it,
used
it
to call
was
it health.
yeah, health, and it was
It's a
it was
joke.
I was thinking it was a joke. Yeah, yeah, it was a joke because
Yeah,
never talked about the only thing, the only sexual thing we talked about was, we're going to watch this movie, and this is the kind of diseases you're going to get if you have sex.
exactly,
Yeah, that's it.
exactly.
That was it.
Well, there was
And
a brief experiment in Texas, and you probably remember this, Alan, where it was going to be abstinence only. People were going
oh
to be
yeah,
taught abstinence,
I remember that.
and what happened? the unwed pregnancy rate shot
Yeah,
up.
it just exploded. It was like
It
somebody set off a
exploded.
thermonuclear bomb of babies.
Exactly. Uh, there's a line in Star Wars where Princess Leia has been caught, right? And she's brought before, Grand Moff Tarkin, and he's, giving her the speech about, trying to look for the rebel base and all that stuff. And she says, great line. She says, "The more you tighten your fingers, the more systems will escape your grasp." And I think that's the problem. I think that was the issue, that the more you try to control people, the more you try to take away their bodily autonomy, as you mentioned, the more they're going to rebel. Because it's funny that people who speak out against homosexuality, or who speak out against, especially speak out against the transgender, talk about, well, it's going against nature, and it's going against, truth and reality, and science and all that stuff. You people, you on the left, you're always talking about, trust the science. Well, where's the science in that? And so on and so forth. Well, when you deny people bodily autonomy, especially when you deny them their sexuality, whatever it might be, uh, it's the same thing. You're
It's
denying
exactly
nature,
the same thing.
because
Yeah,
we are sexual creatures. We have to be. Otherwise, there's no more people,
that's
you
right.
know? And, they talk about, well, homosexual, they're against nature, and, we won't have any more people if everybody turns gay and all that stuff. No, nobody's going to turn gay. Nobody
Yeah.
turns gay.
Yeah,
Again, that's that other notion of,
it's not
it's a choice. Exactly. It's not a virus, and it's not a choice.
Yeah.
Regardless of what they might think. It's just something. It's something that you're born with.
Brain is wired differently, and they're just wired differently overall than a person who calls himself straight. And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just another way of way of living. So,
just another way of existing.
Yeah. So I'd like to bring up Renee. Are you there?
I am, and I still have a video queued up that I think we might want to play to have you and Alan react to.
Yes, please. Yes. I think this would be a good time for that.
That would be yes.
Old guys react.
So here is the first episode of, well, I'm just going to play it.
Play it.
Welcome to This Week in Humanity. I'm Dennis Tardon with my co-host, the AI chatbot Pi. Say hello, Pi.
Hello, Pi.
Comedians. Pi, a big story in the USA this week was a photo that surfaced showing an upside-down flag flying in front of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito's house for several days after the insurrection of January the 6th, 2021. The upside-down flag was flown during the insurrection, a symbol of the attempt to thwart the peaceful transfer of power, a bedrock principle of our Constitution. Justice Alito said that it was his wife, Martha Ann, who flew the flag in response to a neighbor who had insulted them. What's your take on this, Pi?
The Justice Samuel Alito upside-down flag story is giving me major Garden of Eden vibes.
How so?
When God confronted Adam about eating the forbidden fruit, Adam responded, and I quote, "The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate." It seems that the first sin wasn't just disobeying God's command, but also deflecting responsibility. Adam pulled off a double whammy, blaming both Eve and God for his actions. That level of deflection takes some serious chutzpah.
Serious chutzpah indeed, Justice Alito. Well, that's This Week in Humanity with Pi and me, Dennis Tardon. We will see you next time.
I watched this show before. I hadn't seen this one yet, though. But Samuel Alito and his, my wife did it. I didn't do it. My wife did it. that is the lamest, weakest sauce excuse in the universe. Um, I think they ought to impeach him just for that. Alone, just how weak his excuse was. He couldn't man up and come and say, "Well, yeah, I flew that flag and I flew it because, I think the election was stolen or whatever it is he's supposed to, that flag is supposed to mean." And then of course the his vacation house on the beach, he was flying the appeal to heaven flag at his house, at the vacation house. And that's a much more explicit Christian nationalist flag. And we got a guy around here, when I go haul off my trash every 3 or 4 weeks, I drive right past his house. He's got his big "an appeal to heaven" flag flying up there on the flagpole. And it's disturbing because it's very explicitly Christian nationalists are flying that one. And then, the coup plotters for January 6th, they were flying that one and the upside down American flag. Of course, the thing about the upside down American flag is, back in the old days, before semaphore stuff was more developed, one way you could show other ships that you were in distress is if you flipped your flag upside down, and they would see that and they would know that you needed help, and they would go and help you. And it got translated in modern times as a signal of distress. And now the Trumpites, or whatever you want to call them, have adopted it as a sign of that the country is in distress and we need to stop the steal and return the legitimate president of the United States to his position for life. Of course, they're not actually thinking for life, but that's what Trump's thinking. I think if he gets to be president again, that's the last real election we'll ever have.
They're so worried about, talk about, well, if we let all these people in from all these other countries, we're going to turn into a third world nation. What do they think is going to happen if we have a president, whether it's Trump or somebody else, who decides, hey, you know what? I kind of like it here, and I'm not leaving. What do they? Isn't that?
Can you say
that happens? That happens in banana republics. That happens in dictatorships. That happens in third world countries.
Yeah.
And the same people who talk about how they love freedom and they love liberty and they love this and that. Well, clearly they don't, or they don't understand what freedom and liberty actually means. And people who talk about, well,
they have their own definition of freedom and liberty.
Yeah.
The definition of freedom and liberty is freedom and liberty for people like me who are white.
Liberty for me and nothing for you.
I mean, the answer to just about every question is, white supremacy. You get right down to it. It's white supremacy.
White supremacy, Christian nationalism, which is two sides of the same coin.
Just a thin veneer over white supremacy.
Yeah.
To kind of hide it some from the people that have a little weaker stomach about those kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So what do you think about all that, Miss Renee?
What do you think about all that? It's a lot. It's a lot to unpack here. It's a lot, but
Renee, let me ask you something.
Here's the thing: is
wait, Renee, let me ask you something before you say anything.
Okay.
Your heritage is Ukraine, right? It's Ukrainian.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So, go ahead with what you were saying, but give us a little perspective from that, considering what's going on in Ukraine right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I'll say I'm very grateful to be in America. So I'm happy that my family came here, and I think that what we want, I think this is what immigrants want. America has this PR, and the PR is that the huddled masses, we come here, We find our rest here. We find diversity. I mean, this is all the PR that we're hearing. And the world needs that America.
Hmm.
But now, like when I was hearing Alan talking earlier about white supremacy and how now really America is a code word for white supremacy, he's totally right. Because if I hear "Make America Great Again," or if I hear "That's a true American," I kind of like it's almost like there's PTSD now associated with the word America.
Yes.
That's what Alan really unlocked for me. And that is just such a crime because when Manny said earlier, well, who's the typical American? I mean, who's the American? America is supposed to be for everyone. It's supposed to be this place of hope where people can come from all over the world. And that's one of the reasons, NASA was so great in the 60s. We had all these immigrants. Even now, if you go to NASA, it's immigrants. You Google immigrants. It's immigrants who are making this amazing. Alabama, they did, I forget what they did. They did, this is several years ago. They they screwed with the e-verify system or whatever, and they were trying to lock out migrants. They didn't want migrant workers. And during that time period, it blew up in their face because all of the produce literally just rotted on the ground. So
Mm-hmm.
great, you don't have illegal immigrants working now in the state of Alabama, but you don't have produce because there were no American citizens who were willing to do those jobs for the wage that had already been grandfathered in. The whole economic system. I mean, if people who are here illegally, and that's another thing too, people who are here illegally, if they literally just all left, we would collapse. And that's
Yeah,
been proven.
labor shortage.
Economists have proven that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
huge labor shortage would just instantly occur, and that's one of the things that they don't they don't either don't seem to understand or they don't want to understand. They want to take a bunch of white people, the people they're supposed to be, uh, standing for, and make them go out and do that kind of stuff, I guess.
Right, exactly. Well, they don't have, when you're talking about the white supremacist commandeering of America and what America really stands for. Because you guys earlier were talking about it, and it's so interesting because I was just looking at a map earlier today of the Spanish sections and which years that and then France and the Dutch were here, and that one of the strengths of America was and is the diversity. And there's even a thing, and I'm trying to forget about it, but even in botany, there's a thing about whenever you make a hybrid, you make a stronger, more diverse plant system.
Yes.
And we know that. And so with humans as well, that's why people who marry someone with a different heritage or immune system, their children can have better immune systems. And it's been documented. So you don't want to be marrying your brother. You don't want to be marrying, because
Your
it's
first
just,
husband.
it's not a great idea. So America is strong because of that. I mean, Germany researched it, and that's why they started opening their doors more because they said, "Oh, well, one of the reasons America is strong is because it's diverse." So the white supremacists that we're talking about, who are saying they're American, they're the true Americans. It's like, oh my gosh, what are they even talking about? That's not the America I wanted to be here for. That's not the America that people around the world are looking for. We need to really rebrand America as what it really is, which is what you guys are talking about tonight. It's just so shameful that now, you see, I don't even think these people are Americans. I mean, what does that word even mean? But to me, the whole point of America was this whole thing of everyone coming together, the best and the brightest and all of that sort of stuff. I guess it's just KKK people out in the boonies somewhere flying their weird flags. And I know what you're talking about. I lived in Georgia for 14 years, and there's rural areas in Georgia where you drive by and you see the battle flag and not to linger. You're not welcome there. And America should be a place that is welcoming to everyone because everyone is putting in. And who works harder than the migrants and the immigrants? Everybody knows that's who built America. So
Well,
really, we want to get rid of the people
yeah.
that built America. Who would be left?
Well, and when you look back at the beginnings of America, slavery is what made America
Right.
into the economic powerhouse that it has become. Is because you had all this free labor in the South, and those people were sending money up north, and it was getting invested in colleges and banks and all these other places, and funded the capital that went into building the industrial system. And a lot of folks don't realize that. Getting rid of slavery was a good thing. It should have never existed to begin with. But
Right.
it's bad. And, it's the same kind of way we refuse to do anything to address that, really, for Black people, the loss of wealth that they have suffered.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to do the same kind of thing with people who immigrate, whether legally or illegally, or just temporarily into the United States. What? Karen. Stop.
Canine cameo.
See, doggy cameo.
We love the canine
It
cameo.
wasn't even my dog.
Yeah, I squirted.
Yeah, my dog. Yeah.
Maybe they'll answer each other. Maybe they know what each other's.
Maybe.
Oh, yeah,
Got the spray bottle. Yeah.
When Carrot, jump up. Come on, everybody wants to see you.
Oh,
Hello.
there it is. See, doggy cameo.
Yes. Sure, little bottom, the quiet one is sitting over here next to the filing cabinet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Okay, now are you going to behave yourself? You going to behave yourself, little buddy? Or are you going to bark some more? Okay.
The barking is the behaving.
Well, he's so loud. He's just, he's the loudest dog I've ever had. And I've had dogs that were quite a bit bigger than him. Okay, he's going to lay down now.
He puts his whole soul into it.
That's right. He
feels the bark.
He is not a halfway kind of dog.
That's right.
He's an all the way kind of dog.
That's right.
Well,
never.
I wanted to just jump off really quick here, because we were talking about a real American, a true American.
Yes,
someone might see me. It depends where you are in the country, but because I do look very, very Slavic. But there are like when I was in Georgia, I'm a white girl, and I could be the apple pie American white girl. But the irony is that every African American I've ever met, a huge percentage of them have Cherokee blood and Native American blood, and then a huge percentage of them have ancestry, yes, as slaves back in the day, but then also slave owners back in the day, because there was a lot of abuse going on. So I can be having a conversation with someone who's an African American, and a MAGA person would say, I'm the real American. No, this person's entire DNA built this country, and I just sort of waltzed in at the end. Like, it's not linear thinking, it's not logical thinking, it's just propaganda, and they're starting from the place of where they want to be, and then they just make stuff up.
Yeah, it's propaganda that's designed to reinforce their sense of entitlement.
Yeah. That's all it is, really.
Yeah.
And people forget. Yeah. And somebody made the point. I don't remember who said this, but the fact is, unless you are part of the thousands of indigenous tribes that lived in this continent, on these continents, you're all immigrants. We're all immigrants at some point. We're all, well, I should say we're all descendants of immigrants, whether we came here 2 minutes ago or 200 years ago. If you came from somewhere else, you're an immigrant.
That's right.
And let's face it, we talked about the Pilgrims, we talked about the Puritans. Weren't they illegal immigrants? Nobody said.
Yeah, how come we can't flip it the other way around? That's what I'm always thinking about. Like when I have to have conversations with people about this, and they are anti-immigrant or whatever, I always say, well, if they're talking about people from Mexico, I'm like, well, you do realize that those borders changed like a million times, and there's indigenous people who are from Mexico, but that's some of their ancestral places. So you're the weirdo, like you're the trespasser. I don't know how that's not obvious.
Exactly.
Well,
Mexico, because of the Spanish conquest, what we now call Mexico extended all the way to what's now Oklahoma,
Yep.
all along the southwest region, Arizona, New Mexico, all that, and up into California, to what we now call California. All that was Spanish territory.
It was.
And was Mexico. So I mean, I have to. I mean, I can say that my people were here first.
Yeah,
I can
because they were.
legitimately say that my ancestors were living in this part of the country long before Santa Anna invited or allowed settlers from what was then part with the United States, Sam Houston and his party, to come in and settle, and that was his first mistake. Was
Yeah,
allowing
letting the white people in was literally his first mistake. Because once we
exactly.
got in
Yeah.
here, it's like, okay, we ended up saying Stephen Austin came in with his guys, and then more people came in.
Right, Stephen Austin,
and
yeah.
then finally, we decided we're our own country, and we said we had all this stuff, and in reality we only controlled down to the Nueces River. But then when we became part of the United States, well then that brought the big bully in, and that's how Mexico ended up losing all that stuff that goes, where New Mexico and Arizona and Nevada and California and that whole chunk, the United States just took it away from them, beat them up, threw them some money to make them feel a little better, and said it's ours now. Paid them a few $1 million, but even so, that doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
I think the Mexican-American War was a huge disaster for Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Dwight Eisenhower's son, who was a famous military historian, said, poor Mexico, so far from God and so close to the United States.
Yeah. But I do have to say, just like Renee said, that she's proud to be an American. She's proud to be here, and so am I. This is a great country.
I am too.
This is a great country, and in no way do I want anybody to think that we're trashing the country. We're just talking about the politics, the political structure, and how it can be very corrosive and very toxic, and how it's become corrosive and toxic, and some of the reasons why. So, Renee, do you want to? Do you have any last words that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, fascinating discussion. I absolutely love that. I know it would trigger a lot of people because a lot of people are, like Manny said at the very beginning, there's not a lot of compromise. This is a polarized political environment that we have now. So someone's going to have this platform, someone has this platform, and never the twain shall meet. They just don't want to get along. But I think that what I learned from tonight by listening to you guys and sort of unpacking it together is that it's really unfortunate that it's a minority of these hate monger white supremacists. I mean, it really is a minority, but they're getting so much spotlight. They're getting so much PR, and they're rebranding that as America. I mean, if you go abroad, there are people that literally think that's America. And it's just not. So we've got to, the more we have these conversations, I would really love to rebrand America the way that it actually is. And it's all of its diversity, all of its messiness. It's not like it's absolutely perfect, but I don't think it's that. I don't think it's a Trump rally. And I think people abroad think America now is just one big Trump rally. And it's just not.
Yeah. Can I point out something real quick or mention something?
Sure. Yeah.
There's a lawyer I watch on YouTube. Her name is Legia Miller, and she did a video this week about the divisiveness in the United States. She's on YouTube, and it's just under Legia Miller. She's a lawyer from Minnesota, and she has just generally really good, takes on lots and lots of different things. But she talks about the law and how it relates, and this she was talking about the idea of another civil war and how everything is so polarized. And I'd encourage y'all and everybody else to go look her up. And if you're interested in deep dives into some of that stuff, she does an exceptionally fine job.
Thank you. Yeah.
I just kind of stumbled across her by accident.
Now, what was the first name again?
Leeja, Leeja, I believe. Miller. Leeja Miller.
Leeja Miller. Okay. Oh, definitely gonna look that up. Yeah.
She's awesome. She's got real blonde hair and wears glasses. But
all right, I'll check her out. I'm always up to finding new content.
But she's really, she's consistently really, really good.
Good. Excellent. Yeah. Well, I want to thank. First of all, I want to thank Allen Coffey for being our guest today and walking us through some of the political things that are happening right now. I want to thank Renee for being my most excellent co-host and Queen of Hair Hats.
Yes, thank you.
And I want to thank everyone who tuned in and commented. I'm sorry I didn't acknowledge a lot of your comments, but I saw a lot of them and they were excellent, and thank you.
I did too.
Good, yeah. So again, whatever your political stripe is, whatever your political beliefs are, get out and vote. Get out and vote. Don't be one of these people who sits on the sidelines and says, "Ooh, I'm not going to vote because they're all crooks and all." No. Find somebody. All politics are local. You'll hear that from some people, and I'm telling you, all politics are local. Find somebody in your town, your city, your county, wherever you live. Listen to them, check out their programs, check out their platform, and if you agree with them, if you think, hey, this person knows what they're talking about, not just because they happen to have an R on their side or a D or whatever, but really pay attention to what they believe and what they're espousing, and vote for them. If you really believe that they are the best candidate, vote for them, but just vote. And like I said, start local and move on to your state government, and then of course the national government. So that's all I've got to say about that. Again, thank you for joining us on this episode of Outside the Lines, and hope to see you soon. Be well and take care of yourselves.